Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. South Korea's birth rate rebounded in July after a record low birth rate the previous month for any month of June. 20,601 babies were born in July, up nearly 8% compared to a year ago. Israeli military continued to trade fire with Hezbollah for the second straight day on Tuesday, leaving nearly 560 people dead. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made clear the war is not with Lebanon, but with Hezbollah. The 79th UN General Assembly is in full swing with world leaders addressing geopolitical risks and challenges. Israeli attacks on Gaza and Lebanon dominated the first day of the leaders' discussions. We start in Lebanon, where Israel and Hezbollah continue to exchange fire for yet another day on Tuesday. Our Choi Soo-hyung reports.
Israel has continued Operation Northern Arrows, the airstrikes targeting Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Lebanese Health Ministry said at least 569 people have been killed in 2 days. Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari has stated that Ibrahim Kobaisi, one of Hezbollah's commanders, was killed. He said the commander was responsible for multiple attacks on Israel, including the rocket attacks on the city of Haifa. On Tuesday local time, Israel carried out airstrikes targeting rocket launchers, command centers and weapons storage sites in several areas of southern Lebanon, the eastern Bekaa Valley and the capital Beirut. The Israeli military said it used 2,000 rounds of ammunition to strike about 1,500 terrorist infrastructure targets in 1 day, and that it is continuing the attacks.
We aim for the operation to be short as possible. That's why we're attacking with great force. Our mission, at the end of the day, is to achieve the goals of the war and to return the residents in the north safely to their houses.
Hezbollah is firing back. Hagari said that around 300 rockets were fired towards Israel and 6 civilians and soldiers were lightly injured. Hezbollah-run Al-Manar TV says the group launched rockets targeting an Israeli explosive factory. Hezbollah also claimed to have attacked an Israeli military base using its new Fadi-3 rockets. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Tuesday that Israel will continue its attacks on Hezbollah. During a visit to an Israeli military intelligence base, Netanyahu stated that Israel is at war with Hezbollah, not Lebanon. The international community is working to reduce tensions. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Lebanon is at the brink and people of the world cannot afford Lebanon to become another Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden stated full-scale war is not in anyone's interest and a diplomatic solution is still possible. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
World leaders are gathered in New York City for the general debate of the 79th UN General Assembly. With global issues to discuss, leaders set out to highlight their country's priorities. Our Yoon has the details.
The general debate of the 79th session of this year's annual UN General Assembly opened in its New York headquarters on Tuesday under the theme, Leaving No One Behind, Acting Together for the Advancement of Peace, Sustainable Development and Human Dignity for Present and Future Generations. The high-level debate session opened with a grim tone, with urgent calls for action amid armed conflict and humanitarian devastation in Palestine, Ukraine, and Sudan, topics which are expected to top the discussion in this session. Calling on world leaders over the need for change, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said 2024 is the year that half of humanity goes to the polls and all of humanity will be affected. He addressed the conflict in Ukraine as a war spreading with no signs of letting up, with civilians paying the price, and reaffirmed his condemnation of abhorrent acts of terror committed by Hamas, highlighting that more than 200 UN staff have been killed in the conflict in Gaza. With 4 months left in office, U.S. President Joe Biden made his fourth and final speech as U.S. President to the General Assembly on Tuesday. He said that the world is at an inflection point, but that there's always a way forward. Addressing the ongoing global crises, he said the world must not flinch from the horrors of Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel, and warned that the world cannot look away from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He also said that the bloody civil war in Sudan has unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Representing regions currently in conflict, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas are both set to speak on Thursday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be making his address to the body on Wednesday, which follows his speech at a UN Security Council special meeting on Ukraine on Tuesday. Russia will be represented by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, with President Vladimir Putin absent from the annual meeting since 2015. World leaders will continue to speak until this year's debate concludes on Monday, September 30th, with South Korean Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yeol set to make his speech on Friday. 이은진, Arirang News.
South Korean ambassador to the U.S. To Hyun-dong raised the possibility of a major provocation by North Korea during the upcoming U.S. presidential election, adding Seoul and Washington will maintain a 24-hour response posture through information sharing and cooperation. Speaking to Korean reporters in Washington on Tuesday, Jo said that Pyongyang has previously conducted provocations during periods of government change in Washington. With the North recently unveiling its highly enriched uranium production facility and a road mobile launcher for intercontinental ballistic missiles, Seoul and Washington are evaluating it as a precursor to a major provocation, such as a 7th nuclear test or an ICBM launch. And here in Seoul, defense officials of South Korea and the U.S. put their heads together and agreed on the need to secure tight cooperation, especially against the diverse changes in North Korean provocations, including the regime's flying of trash-carrying balloons. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
The 25th Korea-U.S. Integrated Defense Dialogue took place in Seoul from Monday to Tuesday, where senior defense officials from both nations reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening their bilateral security alliance. South Korea's Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy Cho Chang-nae and the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia, Anka Lee, discussed growing threats from North Korea. A central focus of the discussions was reinforcing the defense vision of the U.S.-RK alliance. The vision includes 3 core objectives: enhancing extended deterrence against the North, modernizing the military alliance through technological cooperation, and expanding security ties with other like-minded nations in the region. Both sides expressed deep concerns over the advancements in North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, including recent space launch attempts. The dialogue also addressed North Korea's continued sending of trash-carrying balloons across the border. The officials condemned these actions, saying they undermine peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. The officials also stressed the importance of a coordinated response to the North's gray zone provocations, which include cyber attacks, electromagnetic warfare, and escalating tensions along the northern limit line, a disputed maritime boundary between the 2 Koreas. South Korea urged North Korea to respect the NLL's crucial role in maintaining regional peace and stability. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
President Yoon on Tuesday held a banquet with key figures of the People Power Party, aimed at encouraging unity and harmony with the ruling party 2 months after its leadership race. Yoon's spokesperson said PPP leader Han Dong-hoon, floor leader Chu Kyung-ho, and new members of the recently appointed leadership were invited. Han has reportedly been pushing for a separate meeting with the president to address their differences over the Yoon administration's medical reform amid its ongoing standoff with junior doctors. While that meeting has not taken place, Yoon appeared to show his goodwill by saying the beef and pork served during the meal was chosen as the party leader enjoys meat. The meal, held in a garden outside the presidential office, also did not feature alcohol to reflect Han's dietary preferences. Yoon also touched upon issues such as inter-party relations with the opposition, the upcoming parliamentary audit, and his visit to the Czech Republic last week. Wrapping up the evening with coffee, Yoon said he hopes to meet second and third-time lawmakers next time. A recent CNN poll shows U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris with a 1 percentage point lead over former President Donald Trump, while a Reuters poll indicates her with a 7 percentage point lead. Our Lee Seung-jae zooms in on the latest polls.
With around 6 weeks to go until the U.S. presidential elections in November, many pundits expect the race to be one of the closest. However, recent election polls show contrasting results, making it even more difficult to predict the outcome of the presidential race. According to the results of a poll conducted by CNN and SSRS from September 19th to the 22nd on 2,074 registered voters across the U.S., Democratic Party candidate Kamala Harris received 48% support, while Republican Party candidate Donald Trump received 47%. However, the lead was much larger in a recent poll conducted by Reuters and Ipsos. The poll conducted on 1,029 people nationwide from September 21st to the 23rd, Harris received 47% support, while Trump received 40%, showing a 7 percentage point lead for the U.S. vice president. With such a tight race, winning key battleground states will be crucial for the candidates. However, even among the 7 battleground states, both Harris and Trump are neck and neck, with many results within the polls' margins of error. A recent poll by the New York Times and Siena College showed Trump with marginal leads in 3 of the 7 contested states, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. Harris also leads Trump in 3 states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, while the 2 candidates are tied in Nevada. A total of 94 electoral votes are up for grabs in those 7 battleground states. 이승재, Arirang News.
The Asian Development Bank released an update to its Asian Development Outlook report on Wednesday, projecting South Korea's economic growth to remain unchanged from July's 2.5%. The bank raised South Korea's outlook by 0.3 percentage points in July and maintained the level for the latest forecast, which is also on par with a forecast by the International Monetary Fund and the Bank of Korea. The ADB has left its projections for economies in the region unchanged from its July report, maintaining its growth outlook for the broader Asia-Pacific region at 5% this year and 4.9% next year, on the back of strong domestic demand and continued recovery in exports, particularly in the tech industry from higher global semiconductor sales driven by the artificial intelligence boom. However, the ADB highlighted looming risks, including potential increases in protectionism depending on the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, escalating geopolitical tensions, further weakness in the Chinese property market, and adverse weather and climatic conditions. South Korea saw an on-year rise in the number of newborns in July after a drop in the previous month. Our Shin Ha-young explains.
The number of births in South Korea in July rebounded from the previous month. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that there were 20,601 births, a 7.9% increase compared to the same month last year. In May, the birth rate increased, but it dropped again in June. An official from the agency mainly attributed the rise in July to a base effect from low birth rates the previous year.
There was a 6.8% on-year decrease in July last year, so this year's increase appears to be larger, suggesting that the growth is partly due to a base effect. The number of births increased in May, dipped slightly in June, but saw a significant rise in July. This is due to a surge in marriages after COVID-19 from August 2022 to March 2023, with the effects leading to more births about 2 years later.
Meanwhile, the number of marriages increased 32.9% on-year to over 18,000, while the number of divorces rose 5.9% on-year to nearly 8,000. The official added that the sharp rise in the number of marriages is a positive sign, as it could lead to more births in the future. The number of deaths also rose 0.4% on-year, but the increase slowed from the previous month due to a base effect from a high number of deaths from the previous year. This brings the natural decline in population to more than 7,600. The official also said that despite the aging population, the mortality rate in July for people aged 65 or above has slightly decreased. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
More support will be on the way for young people who are struggling to find jobs. The government and the ruling party agreed to back those in need by expanding the related budget. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-woo has more.
To help young South Koreans who belong to socially vulnerable groups, the government and ruling party officials decided on Tuesday to work on revising relevant laws to provide better support. Ministers of Welfare and Employment and leaders of the ruling People Power Party agreed to push for a change to the existing act for the support of vulnerable young people to foster equal opportunities for those in low-income groups, those who are taking care of family members in need, or those who are socially isolated and staying at home. As part of the effort, they are pushing to expand the employment budget for next year to better address youth unemployment. The plan is to bolster the 2025 budget by 16% compared to this year to above 2.2 trillion Korean won. The Employment Ministry will use the budget to offer tailored job counseling for over 240,000 students and graduates. Furthermore, they will create a database of graduates to find talented people who are unemployed and help them find work.
The Ministries of Employment and Education will cooperate to discover young people in prolonged unemployment since graduation.
The Ministry of SMEs and Startups plans to share job announcements at 30,000 model small and medium-sized companies with good working environments and launch a special savings deposit program for those working in them. Meanwhile, the ruling party pointed out the need to work on the structural issue over the long term.
The anxiety among the younger generation is no mere personal issue, but a structural problem of our society. We will take the initiative to lead the problem-solving process from the viewpoint of these young people.
Tuesday's announcement followed a recent alarming survey result from Statistics Korea, which found that over 80,000 young people in South Korea had not sought work for at least 3 years since graduation, and instead spent most of their time at home isolated from society. Lee Si-woo, Arirang News.
The K-pop girl group NMIXX will be the first K-pop artist to participate as a panelist at the U.S. Billboard Latin Music Week. The event will be held from October 14th to 18th at the Philomora Miami Beach in Florida. NMIXX will attend the event on the 16th to talk about K-pop and the Latin music market. Billboard Latin Music Week is one of the biggest events in the Latin music industry. Now it celebrates its 35th anniversary this year. And the group are also planning to hold a fan meeting in Seoul from October 4th to 6th.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Tropical Storm John, which made landfall in Mexico's southern Pacific coast on Monday as a Category 3 hurricane, unleashed heavy rains as it moved inland, causing at least 3 deaths, with dangerous levels of flooding expected. By Tuesday morning, the remnants of the storm brought strong winds and dumped heavy rain of over 250 millimeters on parts of Guerrero and Oaxaca, 2 of the poorest states in Mexico. 2 people died after a mudslide buried a house, while a woman was also killed when a wall collapsed on her house, with all 3 deaths reportedly occurring in Guerrero State. The storm made landfall as a Category 3 hurricane with wind speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour on Monday, raising fears of a repeat of Hurricane Otis last October, which quickly transformed from a tropical storm into a Category 5 hurricane and devastated the coast of Oaxaca to Acapulco. Forecasters predict heavy rain of up to 500 millimeters through Thursday in the region, with a high risk of flash flooding and mudslides. OPEC launched its 2024 World Oil Outlook in Brazil's Rio de Janeiro on Tuesday, where it was met by climate activists staging protests. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries' latest report, published on Tuesday, doubled down on forecasts that global oil demand will continue to grow to 2050. According to the report, world oil consumption is set to increase to some 120.1 million barrels per day by middle of the century, a 20% increase from current figures. Climate protesters were both inside and outside the venue, and when a speech by OPEC Secretary General Haitham al-Ghais got off to a shaky start with the podium lights turning off and a microphone failure, a protester ran on stage with a banner that read "Planning Climate Catastrophes" before being escorted out. Outside the event venue in Rio, a small group of Greenpeace activists staged a protest holding signs and images of environmental damage caused by the oil industry. A private hearing that will determine who gains control of Rupert Murdoch's global publishing and television empire concluded on Monday in a courtroom in Reno, Nevada. According to the New York Times, which obtained copies of sealed court documents, 93-year-old Murdoch is attempting to change the terms of his family's trust, which holds large stakes in News Corp, the owner of Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, so that upon the billionaire's death, the media companies remain under the control of his eldest son, Lachlan Murdoch. But standing in Lachlan's way is an irrevocable trust Murdoch set up during his second divorce, which states that 4 of his eldest children will receive equal shares in the company upon his death. And finally to Qatar, where thousands of teddy bears have gone on display in downtown Doha to pay tribute to children killed in Gaza since the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict. In an exhibition titled Echo of Lost Innocence, 15,000 teddy bears wearing black t-shirts with the message, "I'm not just a number, I'm human with an identity," went on display to raise funds and awareness for the plight of children in Gaza. Local organization Qatar Charity said most of the teddy bears had been sold and 100% of the proceeds will be donated to children in Gaza. The installation is designed by multidisciplinary Lebanese artist Bashir Mohammed and will be on display until September 26th. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We're having a summer-like afternoon in most parts with highs going up 3 to 4 degrees higher than norms, rising to the upper 20s after a breezy start. We had sunny skies to begin the day, but more clouds are expected as the day goes on. Jeju and the south coast could even see 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall in the afternoon, with a slim chance but still a possibility of drizzle in the capital area. Air quality will be good nationwide all day, and Seoul gets up to 28 degrees, but Gwangju will be topping out at 30 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, we can expect this year's autumn foliage to arrive 2 to 5 days later than usual due to the prolonged heat wave we've had this summer. And that afternoon heat sticks around through this weekend before a major cool down follows next week. Passing rain is in the forecast for tomorrow in most parts of Korea. Then east of Gangwon-do province will see rain on Friday and into Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.